Every morning before the sun rises, Tandi is already awake, sweeping the corridors of the grand corporate building in Nambaru. Her faded uniform clings to her like a second skin, worn thin from years of use, but her smile always shines brighter than the polished marble floors she cleans. She is only 28, yet life has weathered her like someone much older. After losing both parents in a tragic accident, Tandi took on the role of both mother and father to her younger sister, Nika. They live in a tiny, crumbling shack at the edge of the city, a place filled with laughter, love, and dreams bigger than the four walls could ever contain. At work, Tandi is often invisible to the suits that walk past her. People like Wanja, a co-worker who sees herself as superior, make fun of Tandi's simple clothes and gentle nature. Still playing Cinderella, Wanja would sneer. Others laugh, but Tandi never flinches. She only lowers her eyes and continues working, holding tightly to a powerful hope in her heart. Despite her circumstances, Tandi never complains. She shares her lunch with the hungry, gives her time to those in need, and listens to everyone, even if no one listens to her. Her kindness is her strength. She believes that being good doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to be real. After work, Tandi rushes home to cook and study with Naika. The young girl dreams of becoming a doctor, and Tandi dreams with her, saving every coin, taking extra shifts, and even selling handmade crafts on weekends just to add a little more to their savings jar. She often stares out the window at night, whispering prayers, not for herself, but for Nika. If I can just get her to university, everything will be worth it, she says quietly to the stars. Her back aches, her hands are calloused, but her spirit remains untouched, a fire built on love and hope. While most people overlook her, there is something magnetic about Tandi. Her warm greetings, the way she gently helps the elderly visitors, or the way she always pauses to pick up a paper someone else dropped. All of it adds up to a heart that beats with quiet strength. What no one knows, not even Tandi herself, is that her life is about to change. In the most unexpected way, her kindness is about to open a door that even she didn't know existed. A door that leads to a future far beyond her wildest dreams. But for now, she remains the cleaner with the gentle heart, and a dream she refuses to give up on. It was a cold, rainy evening. Dark clouds covered the sky, and thunder rumbled in the distance. As most workers hurried out of the tall glass building with their umbrellas and expensive coats, Tandi stayed behind, wiping the last glass door and making sure the lobby was clean before locking up. She was tired and hungry, but as always, she didn't complain. Her worn shoes squeaked softly as she stepped outside into the drizzle. Just as she was about to leave, something caught her eye. There, by the side of the gate, was a small figure curled up on the ground. It was an old woman, her grey hair soaked with rain, her hands trembling, and her body shivering uncontrollably. She had no shoes, no jacket, and her dress was torn and clinging to her skin. People passed by her like she didn't exist. Some glanced at her and looked away. Others walked faster, pretending not to see her. But Tandi stopped. Her heart couldn't ignore the pain in the old woman's eyes. Without a second thought, she walked over and knelt beside her, gently placing her hand on the woman's shoulder. "Mama, are you okay?" she asked softly. The woman looked up slowly, her eyes filled with sadness and fear. She didn't speak much, just nodded weakly. Tandi didn't have much, but what she had, she gave. She took off her only umbrella and placed it above the woman's head. Then, she opened her lunchbox, the same one she had packed for tomorrow, and gave the woman half of it. Bread, a boiled egg, and a few slices of tomato. The woman hesitated, but the hunger in her eyes couldn't hide. Tandi then reached into her bag and pulled out a small, faded blanket, the one she used every night when the cold winds blew through the holes in her shack. She wrapped it around the old woman's shoulders with such care, as if she was her own grandmother. The woman began to cry. Silent tears rolled down her cheeks. She held Tandi's hand tightly and said in a shaky voice, "You're the first to see me today, the first to stop, the first to care." Tandi smiled gently, not knowing her small act would become the turning point of her life. The woman whispered one more thing before Tandi left, words that would stay in Tandi's heart forever. "May your kindness return to you in a way you can never imagine." Tandi walked away soaked in rain, without an umbrella, with less food, and no blanket, but her heart felt warm. She didn't do it to be noticed. She did it because it was the right thing to do. What she didn't know was that this old woman, Mama Jovia, was no ordinary stranger, and soon Everything in Tandi's life was about to change. The sun had barely risen when Tandi hurried down the muddy path from her shack, her worn-out shoes splashing through puddles from the night's rain. She had barely slept, her thin body still cold from giving away her blanket, and her stomach rumbling with hunger after giving away half her food. But her heart was full from the moment with Mama Jovia. She had even taken a detour that morning, just to check if the old woman was still there. She wasn't. The spot where she had sat was empty, as if she had vanished into thin air. Tandi whispered a prayer for her safety, then rushed toward the towering corporate building where her shift was about to start. She was only 7 minutes late, but those 7 minutes were enough for Mr. Tembo, the building supervisor, to unleash his fury. He stood by the front desk with a scowl on his face, arms crossed. "Do you think this is a market stall, Tandi, that you can open whenever you feel like?" He barked loud enough for everyone to hear. The security guards chuckled, and the staff at the front desks looked away, pretending not to notice. Tandi bowed her head and muttered a quiet apology. "It won't happen again, sir." But her calm response only seemed to annoy him more. Wanja, her co-worker with a sharp tongue and mean streak, smirked as she walked past with her mop. "Maybe if you weren't busy feeding beggars, you'd have some energy to clean floors on time," she said with a sneer, just loud enough for others to hear. A few laughed. Tandi didn't respond. She just bent down, picked up her bucket, and walked to the far corridor to start her work. But not everyone was cruel. Layla, the soft-spoken receptionist who rarely talked to anyone, quietly walked over to the janitor's closet where Tandi usually kept her things. She held out a small brown bag with 2 pieces of fruit and some bread. "Here," she whispered shyly. "I noticed you didn't eat yesterday. You have a rare heart, Tandi. Don't let this world harden you." Tandi looked at her, eyes wide with surprise. No one had done anything kind for her in a long time. She took the bag with trembling hands and smiled with tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Layla," she whispered. She went back to work, scrubbing floors and wiping windows with more strength than before. Not because her body wasn't tired, but because her heart was being reminded that kindness wasn't always a one-way street. Even in a place filled with cold hearts and harsh words, a few warm souls still remained. And sometimes, those whispers of support were louder than any shout of hate. What Tandi didn't know was that something much bigger was stirring quietly in the shadows, something that would soon change everything. Days had passed since the rainy night when Tandi shared her food, her blanket, and her only umbrella. She hadn't seen Mama Jovia again, and sometimes wondered if the old woman had even been real, or just a strange dream sent by the gods to test her heart. But one bright afternoon, as the city sun bounced off the tall windows of the Nambaru towers, the impossible happened. Mama Jovia returned. She was still frail, but something about her looked different this time. Her face, though aged and wrinkled, was cleaner. Her clothes were no longer drenched in filth, and her eyes, tired but sharp, looked around the lobby with a purpose. She stood at the gates of the skyscraper where Tandi worked, gripping the rusted rail like it was her lifeline. Her voice, though weak, carried clear. "I want to speak to the CEO, please." The guards burst into laughter. "The CEO? Do you even know who that is, Grandma?" One sneered. "You think a barefoot beggar can walk into an office like this?" Mama Jovia didn't flinch. She stood there quietly, patiently. The sun blazed, and people passed her by, all pretending not to see her, except one person. Tandi, who had just stepped out to dump the trash, froze when she saw her. "Mama?" she whispered, heart racing. She rushed over, ignoring the judgmental stares of the guards. "Mama Jovia, what are you doing here? You should be resting." But the old woman gave her a gentle smile. "I must see the one in charge. I've waited long enough." Tandi knew what would happen if she interfered, but she couldn't turn her back on the woman who had blessed her with such powerful words. She gently guided her past the gate, through the marble floors of the lobby, and sat her on one of the waiting chairs. "You can rest here for a moment. I'll try to see what I can do," she said softly. But it didn't take long before security noticed. 2 uniformed men stormed into the lobby, their radios buzzing. "She's not allowed here!" one barked. Before Tandi could explain, they were dragging Mama Jovia out of the building like she was a sack of trash. The old woman didn't scream or fight. She simply looked back at Tandi and nodded calmly, as if she had expected this. Moments later, Mr. Tembo stormed in, red with anger. He pointed a trembling finger at Tandi. "You brought her in here? Have you lost your mind?" Tandi's voice shook. She just needed a place to rest for a moment. That's all. Mr. Tembo slammed his clipboard on the front desk. "This is a company. not a charity. If I catch you doing this nonsense again, you're finished here. Tandi stood quietly, her heart pounding, but her face steady. She had helped, because it was the right thing to do. What she didn't know was that this simple act would soon flip her world upside down. 2 days later, something happened that no one in the building could have ever imagined. It was just a normal morning. Staff were rushing in with coffee cups. Elevators dinged, and the usual office buzz filled the air. But then, a sleek black car pulled up right in front of the company's entrance. Everyone turned to look. The car door opened slowly, and out stepped a woman that made everyone's eyes widen in disbelief. It was Mama Jovia, but this time, she didn't look like the frail old beggar people had pushed aside. She was dressed in beautiful royal African fabric, her head held high, her skin glowing, and her steps firm and confident. Beside her walked men and women in suits, members of the company's legal team. The security guards who had once thrown her out now stood stiff like statues, too shocked to speak. Whispers spread like wildfire across the office floors. Is that the same old woman from the other day? What's going on? Why is the legal team with her? Then, something even more shocking was revealed. Mama Jovia wasn't just any woman. She was the mother of Adisu, the CEO of the entire company. She had been missing for months. Everyone had been searching for her, but with no luck. It was said she had suffered a stroke and, in a moment of confusion, wandered off. During that time, she had been mugged, left with nothing, and slowly lost her memory. She had been living on the streets of Nambaru with no one recognizing who she truly was. But something about Tandi's kindness, her warmth, her food, her blanket, her umbrella, and mostly, her dignity, had helped stir Mama Jovia's memory. After that encounter, Mama Jovia started remembering pieces of her past, and she had someone quietly follow up on Tandi. The car that arrived today carried not just the truth, but a powerful storm of change. As Mama Jovia walked into the building, everyone moved out of her way. Those who had laughed now lowered their eyes. Mr. Tembo, who once yelled at Tandi for helping her, went pale. Even Wanja, who used to mock Tandi, stood frozen in place. The energy in the air had shifted, completely. Mama Jovia looked around slowly, as if taking in every face. Then, with a soft smile, her eyes landed on Tandi, who was still in her cleaning uniform, holding a mop and standing at the corner near the lift. Their eyes met, and Mama Jovia walked straight to her. "She is the reason I'm standing here today," Mama Jovia said aloud, her voice echoing across the room. Gasps filled the air, mouths opened. No one could believe what they were hearing. Tandi, the janitor everyone had looked down on, was now being honored by the most powerful woman connected to the CEO himself. The atmosphere in the building shifted completely. People who once barely noticed Tandi now stared at her like she was someone from a dream. As Mama Jovia finished speaking, her son, the powerful and respected CEO, Adisu, entered the lobby. The moment he saw his mother standing strong and alive, tears welled up in his eyes. He rushed to her and embraced her tightly, unable to speak for a while. Then, still emotional, he turned toward Tandi. He walked up to her, still holding his mother's hand, and looked at Tandi with so much gratitude. "You helped the woman who gave me life," he said, his voice trembling. While others walked past her, laughed at her, and judged her, you gave her warmth, food, and dignity, and you did it expecting nothing in return. Today, I thank you, in front of everyone. There was silence in the building. Even the noisy printers and phones seemed to pause. Staff, guards, even the highest level executives stared in disbelief as Adisu pulled Tandi gently to stand beside him and his mother. He raised her hand and continued. "From this day forward, Tandi is no longer a cleaner. Her heart is too big for that title. She is now the manager of community relations. She will lead our company's kindness and outreach programs, because who better to spread goodness than someone who lives it every day?" People gasped. A few clapped slowly, then louder, and soon the entire building was filled with applause. Tears rolled down Layla's cheeks, the quiet receptionist who had once defended Tandi. Even some of the staff who used to ignore or mock her felt ashamed. Mr. Tembo couldn't even lift his head. Wanja, who had always treated Tandi badly, was frozen, her mouth slightly open, unable to believe that the woman she called foolish was now standing with the CEO and his mother like royalty. Tandi, still in her janitor uniform, stood quietly, her eyes wide with shock. "I don't even know what to say," she whispered, overwhelmed. I just did what I thought was right." Mama Jovia stepped forward, holding both her hand and Adisu's. "And that," she said warmly, is what true greatness looks like. Kindness without a reason, love without a title. That day, everything changed for Tandi. From a cleaner no one respected to a woman everyone admired, she became a symbol of what it truly means to have a beautiful heart. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't just surviving, she was shining. Tandi's life transformed in ways she never imagined. Just a week after the emotional day at the office, she and Nyeka were handed keys to a stunning company apartment in one of the best parts of Namburu. The space was nothing like their one-room shack. It had 2 bedrooms, a clean kitchen, running water, and a balcony that overlooked a peaceful garden. Nyeka couldn't stop spinning around with joy, touching the walls like she was in a dream. "Sister," she said with teary eyes, "is this real?" Tandi hugged her tight and whispered, "Yes, it's real, and it's just the beginning." Soon after, CEO Adisu arranged a full university scholarship for Nyeka. Not just tuition, but everything: books, housing, food. Nyeka, who had almost given up on her dream of becoming a doctor, now had her future laid out before her like a golden path. On the first day of school, she wore her new uniform with pride, carrying her books like they were treasures. Despite her new title at work, her elegant clothes, and the respect she now received, Tandi didn't let success change her heart. She still greeted every staff member with the same warm smile. She thanked the security guards, encouraged the cleaners, and even gave Wanja a nod whenever they crossed paths. Her kindness didn't fade, it only grew stronger. Every weekend, Tandi and Mama Jovia would go out into the city. They visited shelters, fed the homeless, and listened to people's stories. Mama Jovia, now fully recovered and back in her rightful place beside her son, always held Tandi's hand tightly during these visits. "You are the daughter I never had," she would say softly, looking at Tandi with pure love in her eyes. "When I had nothing, you gave me everything." They didn't do these acts for cameras or applause. They did it because they had once known hunger, cold, and loneliness, and they couldn't bear to let others suffer the same way. Wherever they went, people began to whisper stories of the lady with the golden heart and the old woman who walks beside her like a queen. Tandi didn't care about fame. She was just happy to finally live with dignity, see her sister thrive, and share the love that had once been so rare in her own life. Her journey from a forgotten cleaner to a respected leader wasn't about luck, it was about heart. And as she often told Nyeka, no matter how high we rise, we must always stay rooted in kindness. The tides had turned, and the office that once laughed at Tandi now whispered her name with respect and even regret. One morning, a quiet buzz spread through the halls like wildfire. Wanja, the same woman who used to mock Tandi every single day, had been caught on camera stealing office supplies, boxes of paper, company tablets, even cleaning materials. She had been doing it for months, believing no one would ever notice. But the new systems Tandi had helped implement flagged the theft. Within hours, Wanja was escorted out by security, her head down, her pride shattered. The same people who once laughed with Wanja now avoided eye contact. Some whispered, "She used to say Tandi was nothing, now look at her." But Tandi didn't gloat. In fact, when someone brought her the news, expecting a reaction, she simply sighed and said, "Sometimes it takes a fall to learn what truly matters." Not long after, Mr. Tembo, the strict supervisor who always found a reason to scold Tandi, faced his own reckoning. Staff had quietly been sending complaints about his rude behavior and misuse of authority. With the company's new focus on compassion and ethics, thanks to Tandi's growing influence, the board took action. Mr. Tembo was removed from his managerial role and reassigned to a desk job in a remote branch, far from the power he once held. He tried to defend himself, but the evidence was clear. His pride had blinded him, and now he was left with silence where his commands used to echo. The most unexpected change was in how the other workers now treated Tandi. People who once ignored her now stood straighter when she passed by. They greeted her with respect, even a little awe. Some wanted meetings, some asked for advice, but Tandi's schedule was too full. Ironically, the very people who once mocked her now couldn't even get a minute of her time. But through it all, Tandi stayed the same. She didn't walk with her nose in the air. She didn't use her new power to settle old scores. Instead, when a young worker asked her why she never got back at those who hurt her, she smiled gently and said, "Let kindness be your guide, not ego. That's how I found peace." Her words echoed through the office, becoming a quiet motto. She had taught them something no training ever could: humility, compassion, and strength through grace. Tandi's rise wasn't just about a job title. It was about showing the world that real power lies in being kind, even when you have every reason not to be. It started with small glances and quiet smiles. Layla, the gentle receptionist who once shared her lunch with Tandi during the hardest days, had always admired her, not just for her beauty, but for her heart. As Tandi grew into her new role, Layla's admiration only deepened. She watched how Tandi treated everyone with kindness, even those who had hurt her. Layla loved how Tandi never let success change her spirit. It was that same humble strength that made Layla's heart beat a little faster every time they talked. One quiet afternoon, as the sun painted golden rays through the office windows, Layla finally gathered the courage to speak. She found Tandi in the company's rooftop garden, watering the flowers she had helped plant as part of the community project. Nervously, Layla walked up, her voice trembling. "Tandi," she began, "I don't know the perfect words, but I've admired you for so long, not just because of what you've done, but because of who you are. I love you." Tandi paused, surprised but not startled. She turned to Layla, her eyes soft and full of calm. A warm smile spread across her face. "I've always felt something special around you, Layla," she said gently. "Your quiet support meant everything when the world was loud with judgment. I love you too." Their embrace was simple, quiet, and full of meaning. Word of their relationship spread gently through the company, not through gossip, but through joy. People who had once ignored or mocked Tandi now clapped and smiled, genuinely happy for her. Even the skeptical ones couldn't help but be moved by the sincerity between them. Mama Jovia, now fully recovered and living with dignity, insisted on hosting the engagement celebration. "This love," she declared with a wide smile, "is proof that kindness attracts blessings." The company's main hall was transformed into a festive haven. Colorful fabrics, traditional music, joyful laughter. It felt less like a corporate party and more like a village coming together to celebrate a harvest of love. Tandi and Layla walked into the hall hand in hand, greeted by applause and cheers. Staff members danced, clapped, and even cried happy tears. It was a moment no one expected, but everyone welcomed. The two women, once separated by silence and fear, now stood united in love, in front of people who had seen their journey from struggle to triumph. No one cared about their titles or background. All that mattered was the light they brought into each other's lives, and into everyone around them. It was more than a proposal. It was a celebration of humanity, of love blooming in the soil of compassion. Tandi, the cleaner who once had nothing but a kind heart, was now surrounded by love, respect, and joy, and she deserved every bit of it. The rain had just stopped, and the golden sun began to peek through the clouds, casting a soft glow on the city. Outside the towering building where Tandi now had a bright office on the top floor, a young female cleaner bent down near the gate. Her uniform was worn, her shoes muddy, but her heart was gentle. She was helping an old man who looked lost and tired, holding his hand as he tried to stand. Others walked past without a glance, but she stayed, patient and kind, just like Tandi once had. From the large glass window of her office, Tandi noticed the scene. She paused, her heart stirred with emotion. It was like looking into a mirror of her past. That girl down there, she thought, is me, years ago. Quietly, Tandi rose from her desk, straightened her blouse, and made her way down. No assistance, no show, just her. She walked calmly through the lobby, nodding politely to the staff, who now respected her deeply. As she stepped outside, the wind played gently with her scarf. She approached the young cleaner, who looked up, shocked to see the now famous manager of community relations standing in front of her. Tandi smiled warmly, just like she had always done. "Thank you," she said softly. "What you just did, it may not seem like much, but it means everything." The girl blinked, confused. "I was just helping him, ma'am." Tandi gently touched her shoulder. "So was I once, and that changed my life forever." As the girl helped the old man to a bench, Tandi turned and walked back inside, but her eyes were a little shinier, her heart a little fuller. She reached her office and stood by the window again, watching the world move, her past and present blending in that one powerful moment. And then, as the music swells and the camera slowly zooms out from her thoughtful gaze, Tandi's voice narrates the final words of her journey. "I was once like you. They said I was nothing, that I would never be more than a cleaner. But one act of kindness, one moment of compassion, it changed everything. So, to anyone listening, Be kind, even when no one is watching, because sometimes someone is, and that someone might just hold your future in their hands. The screen fades to black. The words, "Be kind," appear in bold letters. And just like that, Tandi's story comes full circle, not with power or riches, but with a message that would echo far beyond the walls of any office building. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect. How many times do we walk past someone in need without a second glance? Tandi's life changed, not because she had money or power, but because she chose kindness when no one else did. In a world that often rewards pride and ignores the struggling, be the one who sees, be the one who cares. You never know whose life you might change with a simple act of compassion, or how that kindness might come back to bless you in ways you could never imagine. Maybe today, you are Tandi. Maybe tomorrow, you'll be someone else's miracle. If you believe the world needs more love, more kindness, and more hope, then help us spread this message. Please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful and heart-touching stories. Your support helps us continue telling stories that inspire and heal. Thank you for watching. And remember, someone is always watching. Let kindness be your legacy.